Hey folks, thanks for taking the time to be here. I decided to put together another video walkthrough for the most recent NAMM pack released on Tone 3000, which is based on a Friedman Jose Arredondo tribute amplifier, and this one is like the PV 6505 1992 original. Was given the MultiLoad treatment. Now, the pack on Tone 3000 is free. It's a community edition pack. If you've been following some of my work, the community edition packs are usually sort of like trimmed down flavor of my full packs, which are available on Ko-fi.com. Right, so basically over here on Ko-fi you have like probably thousands of profiles on each pack, whereas on the Tone 3000 edition it's a little bit more trimmed down, free of charge. Everybody can grab them, use them, jam, and so on. So the reason why I decided to put together another walkthrough is because this is another one of the beefy packs, and if people haven't seen the previous one on the PV, they might lose out on a couple of details which are very important to making the most of this pack. So I'm just gonna start with the Tone 3000 page over here, and if you read through all of this, it basically just tells you what work's been done and how the amplifier has been profiled. So essentially I've been using real cabinet loads, so no reactive loads, no dummy loads or load boxes or so on and so forth. And I use real cabinets loading down the power section of the amplifier. And for this pack I basically used my Mesa, the oversized straight cabinet, along with the Marshall, the 1960 BV, so that's the bottom, the straight cab with the Celestion vintage speakers, the Marshall Celestion vintage speakers, and the Mesa has the OG Mesa branded Celestion speakers built entirely for them, for T4335Bs, I think, from 2008. Now, so basically I reamped and everything twice. With each cab, just to give people the different flavors of what a cabinet would actually imprint on the tone coming out of the amplifier. Right, so all of the profiles are calibrated. So if you're used to leveraging calibration to get the most out of these profiles and get the profiles to behave exactly as I intended them to, rest assured that the calibration is cooked in. I also included, so I tap the signal in between the amplifier and the cabinet, and I give you a DI profile, so you can use your own IRs, as well as mic'd up profiles. So I have, for each combination of the tone stack on the amplifier, you get one DI profile and then another 5 mic'd up flavors. So it's going to be an SM57, an SM58, and then 3 other blends in between the SM57 and the SM58. So that's 6 profiles per each combination of the tone stack, which is wild, and adds up to a lot of profiles in a pack. I also train, so every pack, every profile is trained 2 times. So each one of those 6 profiles that I was talking about for each tone stack is actually trained 2 times. So first, I train them in the standard architecture. So this is the A1 architecture that you probably might hear people talking about right now, just because the new improved A2 architecture might be around the corner. Wink, wink, Steve. And then, just because NAMM is open source, I also train with a custom architecture developed by a guy named Rickard Gertsen. He's the GearPage 38 at the GearPage forum. He has a very interesting thread over there, and how he tweaked the NAMM code to get to something that's considerably better than the standard architecture, which, by the way, standard is pretty much state of the art already. It kind of beats everything out there, Tonex, neural capture, V2, and so on and so forth. So it's still the best, and this is taking it one step above. I also have a custom training signal, so not the default NAMM one, that you run it through the amplifier, to the gear to get the profile. I have toyed around with a lot of flavors, a lot of bits and pieces of the signal. I have a couple of anti-aliasing sweeps that Carmelo, DLC86, pioneered, along with another passionate member of the digital gear community, trying to get the aliasing down as much as possible. As well as I also use the high-fidelity signal chain, so RME interface, UCX Fireface 2, which is a very, very, very linear interface, along with Lele P-Split 3 REamp box, which is also a crazy linear REamp box. It's not advertised as a REamp box, but does a terrific job as one. Right, so that's pretty much like the overall description on the Tone 3000 page. Some people mostly skip through this I think, because some of the questions that I usually get from folks afterwards, they're already answered within the description. But I think just because the more button isn't as obvious, I mean, people kind of miss out on these things. Right, so the full pack has a slew of things. I'm not just going to go through this, but one other thing that I want to touch upon, and this is really me being transparent and upfront with people. So if anybody wants to go and buy the packs on Ko-fi, or they would like to know exactly what I include in the packs, just for the giggles, there's a link over here to a spreadsheet, an Excel spreadsheet, and this is something that I do for all my packs, where if you access it, you can pretty much, let me just resize this because it went full screen. You can pretty much, that's not this one. There we go. Right. So you can pretty much see all of the settings, all the knot permutations that made it into the pack. So you can pretty much filter by the profile type. So if it's an amp, right, a preamp only or a power amp only profile, and then you can also sort by the inspiration. I usually go through a research phase just before I start shooting everything, so if there's any demo on YouTube that was pretty good sounding, then I tried to mimic those settings and they made it to the pack, along with my own settings. I include noon settings as well as, things that sounded good, and I wanted to replicate and share those with people that are into the gear and they want to support my work. So you can also sort by the inspiration if you want to. So if you want to see how Dave Friedman would dial in this amplifier, there you go, right? And then the present styles, and if you're only interested in the Marshall cab, right, there you go. And this is the profile name. So you can go diving into the folder after this specific profile, okay? Now, let me show you. So if we're still on the Tone 3000 page, I'd like to help people understand which profiles, and there's one other thing that I want to mention over here is the standard architecture profiles. They'll work on NAMM players such as the Dimehead, the Sony Lab Sound Station Pro, the Darkless Anagram, whereas the REVyHI, I don't think it'll work on anything other than the Anagram if you're into hardware players. But the standard architecture profiles, they will, right? If you grab the pack from Tone 3000 and you don't know which one is standard or which one is the higher architecture, the REVyHI, you can look over here at the size, right? You have these arrows and they'll say standard, and the larger ones will say custom. For the larger ones, I also tried including the suffix REVyHI at the end of the file, so that should also be another indicator. Or if you download them all, you can sort by size, and the larger ones you can just put in a separate folder because they're more demanding to run. They are more accurate, but they're gonna tax your CPU more. Okay. Now, so if you bought the pack on Ko-fi, it's gonna be a little bit more easy for you because you don't have to do that exercise. You're going to see these two folders, the REVyHI and the standard A1. And then if you expand these, you're going to see the amp, OD, POW, which is isolated power amp, isolated preamp. I'm just gonna start with having a look at the pre ones, just going through the structure, right? So you'll just see all of the NAM files over here. The preamp ones are basically me shooting the sweep signal into the front of the amplifier, into the guitar input, and then just collecting or recording the signal coming out of the effects end. This is pretty useful just in case you want to, you have one of those NAM players and you're out gigging, there's a backline amp, something that's not too high gain or just very clean. You can run your NAM player out with a preamp of, a fire breathing preamp, like from this Jose amp, like, diode clipping and all that, very gained up. And you can run that preamp profile into the effects return of the backline amp, and then you're gonna have a hot rodded, beast on stage, right? It's pretty cool. Or you can daisy chain preamp NAM profiles into poweramp NAM profiles of other amps. So you can chain a Jose preamp into something like the poweramp profile of a Mesa Boogie triple rectifier, and we will get into that. The poweramp profiles are pretty cool because you can, if you have something like pedals that you're running straight into your audio interface, like preamp pedals, Tone King Imperial, some of the Friedman stuff like the Synergy, Randall, and so on, the Synergy Syn 1. You can route those into your audio interface, but leverage a NAM profile of a power amp, and that's going to have the speaker impedance curve of one of my cabs baked in either DI form, so this is non-mic'd. You can also daisy chain another IR of your choice, or they're already mic'd up, right, with my own. So you're going to get the power amp section with speaker impedance curve of one of those two cabinets, along with the mic flavors, SM57, SM58, or the blends. And running one of those preamps into, real preamps into your audio interface, and, following up with a power amp profile is going to give you like the real amp feel, like the big RN feel, okay? OD is pretty much overdrive pedals, and I included about 40 profiles of other overdrive pedals in this pack, so you can stack in front of the Jose profiles, and if you're into boosting amplifiers, then you can leverage those and they'll sound pretty good, and we'll get into that in a bit. And then the meat and potatoes is the amp, right? So as I was saying, you have DI, so where the signal is tapped right in between the speaker and the amplifier, the speaker out, and then the mic'd up flavors, right? So I think that's about me yapping, or at least walking through these things, and let's just dive into Reaper and hear some sounds. All right, so over here I just have blank project, doesn't have anything, so I'm just gonna add a track. Record my guitar, and let me just route that to OBS. So if it works, we should just hear some very simple guitar DI. Just bare bones. Okay, so let's get into the Jose pack. Okay, just gonna add an instance of NAM. Right, so let's see, Steve Atkinson. Right, and there we have it. So let me just rename this so we have things into context. So I'm just gonna say amp. All right. So I'm just gonna load up an amp profile of data. I'm just gonna go with the standard ones, just gonna grab a DI profile, right? And just by itself, because it's a DI, it's gonna sound like right, so not too pleasant or anything like that. Let me just bring the volume down a little bit. And because it's a DI profile, you can pretty much follow up with some of your favorite IRs. Let me just go with some of Ed's profiles. Right, and top left, I'm just gonna get the 46 one, which is pretty much my favorite. and let's see how it sounds. I'm just gonna disable the EQ because I'm not using it anyway. Right, so right off the bat, after we added an IR to the DI profile, it sounds like a mic'd up guitar tone. Right, but now I want to, because I have calibration metadata, I want to enable calibration, and what you can do is, what you have to do, it's very simple. So if you haven't looked up calibration and how to leverage calibrated profiles, I have 2 videos on my YouTube channel on that. You can watch those and it'll make a little bit more sense. But the gist of it is, if you leverage calibration and the profiles have calibration metadata built into them, you're pretty much getting the same experience as if you're plugging straight into the amplifier itself, right? So I'm just gonna enable this, and I'm just gonna type in my values, and off we go. With calibration enabled, you should be able to, the profile should be able to clean up a lot more consistently to the real gear as well. So check this out. This is just the volume of my guitar. So it's pretty cool, it's very powerful. Now, this is the DI profile. Let's assume that maybe you're on a Vailton unit or something like that, or you don't want the option paralysis of diving through IRs. I got you covered. So you can disable the IR, and you can load up some of the mic'd up profiles, right? So we were on the Transylvanian Rub. Let's go with the blends. So you don't need any IRs for these, right? And you can actually save some CPU, just because they all, you don't need another IR block. Convolution doesn't eat up too many resources, but still. And blend 2. And these are the isolated mics. So they're not bad at all. I mean, they turned out really good. And if you're sick of just scrolling through IRs and feeling like you're wasting a lot of time, kind of took care of that for you by limiting you to 5 mic'd up options. Okay, so I mean, that's the amp and the DI and the mic'd up profiles. So now let's talk a little bit about or see the multi-load thing in action, right? Because this is what's on the can over there, big titles, big letters, multi-load, right? So we basically have the same profile reamped twice, with the load being, and just to the load being either one of these cabinets, and just to make it like an apples to apples comparison, I'm just gonna use the DI profile with the same IR, because if I use the mics on each one of the cabs, the speakers will come into the picture. But since we're only interested in the speaker impedance curve, that gets imprinted on the profile, a DI profile with the same IR is going to be a little bit more apples to apples in terms of hearing things. So we have the Transylvanian Rub on Vintage Presence with the Mesa 412, and let's see how that one sounds. Enable the IR. Right, right? So let's look for the same thing, but reamped through the Marshall, right? So let me just go here. Marshall, and this is the hardest part about working with profiles, you know, the search, right? So this is the one that we're going to be jumping to in a minute, but I just want to hear the Mesa one again. Marshall. Mesa. So you can actually hear, and you'll also feel it under the fingers, like the Mesa is a little bit more bigger in the low end, or in the low mids. It has more content going on over there, right? Now that's pretty much the amp profiles and the multi-load concept. But let me just show you a little bit about around the preamp and the power amp profiles, because those are also very powerful too. Before we do that, let's have a look at the OD, the overdrive. So let's say maybe this isn't high gain enough for you. What you can do is you can add another instance of NAM beforehand. Let me just rename this to overdrive. All right, just gonna disable the overdrive, the IR section over here. I don't need it. Also going to calibrate this because it's going to be a pedal, and I want it to have the output calibrated as well. And I'm just gonna load one of those OD profiles that we have over here. Just gonna go with the tube screamer, this one maybe, or this one. Let's see, yeah, come on, okay. So we now have a tube screamer profile going into the Jose. Right, so you can really push things hard. Okay, so that's the OD profiles. You can mix and match. I mean, there's a slew of them, about 40, and they weren't randomly dialed in. That's what I'm gonna say. I tried making them as useful as possible for different amp settings and different types of tones, right? Now let's go to the preamp and the power amp profiles, because those are some very interesting use cases. Now I'm just gonna rename this, and I'm just gonna say call it preamp, and I'm just gonna rename this one, and I'm just gonna call it power amp. All right, so over here in the preamp section, I'm just going to go into the Jose pack. Right, and I'm just gonna look at the preamp, and let's say I want to pick the Transylvanian rub, because that's what the one that we were on. And over here in the power amp section, let's see, maybe, you know, the Transylvanian rub. Let's see what settings did it have, and this is where the Excel spreadsheet comes into play, and it's very powerful. Right, I've applied the filter, and let's see, Transylvanian rub on the vintage presence mode. Had the presence on 0. Right, maybe I want to have the same preamp settings with the presence on 6, and this is where it gets really, really powerful, because you can actually customize the tones. So in the power amp, you can go over here. DI, because we're using, and we can use the vintage presence, right? Power amp, Mesa 412, vintage presence on 6. See? And you have the power amp with each cab across all of the entire sweep, like in increments of 1 with of the presence. Now I'm in both vintage and new presence. Right, and this is where we're at right now. If it's too quiet, you can bring up the output. Maybe I want to mix the the preamp of the Jose with something like the 6505. So, and I can do that. I can go into the power amp profiles of the 6505, and let's say, you know, both of them resonance and presence on 7. Right, and if you really want to get nerdy, you can also throw another instance of NAM in front. Let's call this, because we replaced that one, so you can basically go to town on these. Right, OD, and let's pick one of these guys. Doesn't necessarily matter which one. Calibrated, because it's a pedal. Also enable calibration. No IR. So we have an amp profile of an overdrive pedal. I think it's an ODD, a warm audio ODD box, going into an amp profile of the preamp of a Friedman Jose Arredondo amp into the power amp of the PV 6505 1992 original. And this is how it sounds. And obviously you can change the preamp as well if you're really into that. I mean, maybe I want this one. Yeah, and very powerful. So in between the preamp profiles, the power amp profiles, DI amp ones, mic'd up ones, I think there are a lot of options for tone shaping. And all you need to do is, you know, try them out, and you just go to town, find your tone, and play some music. Okay. Again, Tone 3000. This is where you'll find them. Tudor. This is my page. I have a lot of other cool gear profiled over here and shared free of charge, free for anybody to grab and to use, as well as the full shebang, the full packs on Ko-fi, which they're not crazy expensive. I think they're some of the cheapest ones on the market, and I try to get to go as accurate as possible. So if you get one of these packs, know that I've gone through a couple of years of trial and error and a lot of reamp gear to get the most accurate representations, the most accurate profiles I could get, and I could squeeze and share. Right, and I think that's pretty much covers it. Appreciate your time, and yeah, hope you dig these profiles and make some music. Cheers. Bye bye.